Diane Hendricks, from dairy farm to $22 billion, roofing queen. The sun hadn't even thought about rising when the alarm clock, a battered tin thing that sounded like a dying goose, clanged at 4:15 a.m. on the Hendricks farm outside Mondovi, Wisconsin. 9 kids tumbled out of 3 bedrooms like marbles from an overturned jar. Diane, the second oldest at 8, was already pulling on yesterday's overalls, the cuffs stiff with dried manure. The dairy barn waited 200 yards down a path of frozen mud, and the cows didn't care that her fingers were numb or that her stomach growled louder than the Holsteins. "Move, Di," her father barked, breath fogging in the lantern light. He was a broad man, with hands like hams, and a voice that could curdle milk. Diane grabbed a 3-legged stool, slid under the first cow, and pressed her forehead to warm flank. The rhythm came quick, squeeze, pull, until the pail filled with frothy white. 1 down, 39 to go. By 6:30, the milk cans were loaded onto the rattling truck, and the kids trudged back for oatmeal that tasted of wood smoke and yesterday's despair. That was life in 1955. No electricity in the barn yet, no running hot water in the house, no mercy from the weather. Diane learned early that the world rewarded the stubborn. She also learned that dreams were a luxury you earned, not a gift you were handed. By 15, she could outwork any hired man. She could splice a fence, birth a calf, and still ace algebra. Teachers said she had grit, whatever that meant. Diane just knew she didn't want to be milking cows at 60, like her mother, back bent double, knuckles swollen into walnuts. The future smelled like opportunity if you could stand the stink long enough to find the door. The door appeared in the form of Ken Hendricks, a roofer from Janesville, with a crooked grin and a pickup older than sin. He came to fix the barn roof after a hailstorm punched holes the size of softballs. Diane handed him shingles and listened while he talked about pitch and flashing and valleys, words like music. When he asked her to the drive-in, she said yes before her father could say no. They married in 1966. She was 19, he 25. Ken had a 3rd-grade education and a 2nd-grade bank account, but he could sell ice to Eskimos and see angles in a roofline the way poets see sonnets. Diane quit the farm the day after the wedding. She kept the calluses, though. They were honest. The first years were lean. Ken roofed houses. Diane kept books on a kitchen table, scarred by cigarette burns from her mother-in-law's endless psalms. They lived in a trailer so small, the bathtub doubled as a couch. Their daughter Tara arrived in 1968, screaming like she already knew the rent was late. Diane sold Avon door to door, then vacuum cleaners, then insurance, anything to keep formula on the shelf. At night, she pored over Ken's blueprints, tracing rafters with a fingertip, memorizing load paths the way other women memorized recipes. "If I can read this," she told Ken, "I can sell this." In 1971, she got her real estate license. Pregnant with their 2nd child, Kim, she waddled through open houses in maternity smocks, charming bankers and builders alike. She sold a duplex to a doctor who later introduced her to a contractor short on shingles. Supply and demand clicked in her head like a ratchet. Divorce blindsided her in 1978. Ken's late nights weren't just on roofs. The papers cited irreconcilable differences, but the truth was simpler. He wanted the blonde secretary. Diane wanted the life they'd promised each other. She kept the kids, the dog, and a mortgage that ate 60% of her commissions. The day the judge banged the gavel, she drove home, parked under the lone maple, and cried until the steering wheel was slick. Then she wiped her face, went inside, and made peanut butter sandwiches. Tara was 10, Kim 7. "We're not done," she told them. "We're just getting started." She sold houses by day, split levels, colonials, the occasional lake cottage, for doctors who summered in Door County. At night, the girls slept while Diane sat at the Formica table under a gooseneck lamp, teaching herself construction math. She learned how many squares of shingles covered a Cape Cod, how much underlayment a ranch needed, why ice dams killed gutters. She cold-called suppliers, quoting inventory numbers until the men on the other end stopped laughing. In 1981, Ken showed up at her door with hat in hand and a proposition. "I've got a chance to buy a bankrupt roofing distributor in Beloit," he said. 3 locations, inventory in the parking lot, creditors circling like buzzards. "We could turn it around." Diane studied the numbers. Gross margin 22%, overhead a bloodbath. "We'd need $500,000 to breathe," she said. "I've got contacts. You've got collateral, your commissions, the house." She looked at the girls coloring in the next room. Tara wanted ballet lessons. Kim needed braces. The safe play was to keep selling ranch houses to orthodontists. The wild play was to bet on a man who'd already broken her heart once. She stuck out her hand. "Partners. 50-50. And I run the books." Ken grinned like he'd won the lottery. Maybe he had. They scraped together $25,000 cash. Her savings, his pickup, a second mortgage. Banks laughed until Diane walked in with pro formas typed on a rented IBM Selectric. A Beloit lender named Ed, who'd bought 3 houses from her, took the meeting. "You remind me of my mother," he said, sliding the check across the desk. "She scared me too." A BC Supply opened its doors. Well, one door, in January 1982. The Beloit store was a cinder block box with a leaky roof and a phone that rang twice a day. Diane wore a hard hat and a skirt, which confused everyone. Contractors wandered in, saw a woman behind the counter, and asked for the boss. "You're looking at her," she'd say, handing over a quote. Some walked out. Most came back when her price beat the boys in Rockford by 4%, and the shingles arrived next morning. Year 1, they lost $112,000. Year 2, they broke even. Year 3, they bought out a competitor in Madison and painted the trucks cherry red. Diane instituted rules. Answer the phone by the second ring. Know every contractor's birthday. Deliver before noon or eat the freight. She hired women for the counter, divorcees, farm widows, anyone hungry enough to memorize SQ numbers. The men grumbled until the women outsold them, 2-1. Ken handled roofs. Diane handled everything else. She negotiated with Owens Corning until the rep begged for mercy. She flew to trade shows in a navy suit bought off the rack at Boston's store, took notes in the margins of contractor magazines, flew home coach with samples in her carry-on. On red eyes, she sketched org charts on barf bags. By 1987, ABC had 20 stores and a warehouse the size of a football field. Diane drove a used Buick, lived in the same ranch house, and still clipped coupons. The girls thought millionaires ate caviar. Their mom ate tuna casserole and liked it. Tragedy struck in 1991. Ken was inspecting a roof in Florida when a skylight gave way. He fell 30 feet onto concrete, dead at 51. Diane got the call while balancing receivables. The phone slipped from her hand and shattered like ice. The funeral was standing room only. Contractors in work boots, suppliers in suits, employees who'd never met Ken but knew Diane's grief was now theirs. She stood at the podium in black wool, voice steady. "He built the foundation," she said. "I'll build the house." She bought out Ken's share from the estate. With a loan against future earnings, banks balked until she showed them 5 years of 28% growth. Then she did what Ken never would have. She centralized purchasing, computerized inventory, and fired 3 vice presidents who thought Lady Boss meant pushover. By 1995, ABC Supply had 100 locations from Miami to Minneapolis. Diane flew commercial, sat in middle seats, and quizzed flight attendants about their 401ks. She started an ESOP, employee stock ownership, because Ken always said the people who sweated should own the sweat. By 2000, every driver, counter clerk, and branch manager had a stake. Profits soared, so did loyalty. The 2000s brought private jets and magazine covers. Forbes called her the roofing queen. Diane hated the nickname, but loved the leverage. She acquired beleaguered distributors, the way chess masters take pawns. Lenzing Wholesale in Ohio, Amcraft in Texas, a chain in Canada that spoke French and cursed in hockey metaphors. Each deal followed the same playbook. Fly in, walk the warehouse at 5 a.m., find the guy who knew where every nail was buried, promote him, cut the bloat, paint the trucks red. She never moved headquarters from Beloit. Roots matter, she told the Wall Street Journal. The town square had boarded windows when she started. Now it had a brew pub and a theater she'd restored brick by brick. She bought the old Beloit Inn, gutted it, and turned it into condos for employees who couldn't afford lakefront. Critics called it paternalism. Diane called it Tuesday. In 2007, the housing bubble burst. ABC's sales dropped 40% overnight. Competitors folded like cheap ladders. Diane gathered 4,000 employees in the Beloit warehouse. No PowerPoint, just a microphone and the truth. "We're not laying off," she said. "We're right-sizing hours, cutting my pay first, and betting on the comeback." She mortgaged her own stock to meet payroll. The gamble paid off when stimulus money rebuilt infrastructure and homeowners fixed roofs they'd ignored for a decade. By 2012, ABC Supply was the largest roofing distributor in America, with 450 branches and $4.5 billion in revenue. Diane turned 65 and refused to retire. "Retire to what?" she asked. "Bridge Club." She dated sparingly, a widowed lumber baron, a state senator who bored her with tax policy. None stuck. Ken had been her co-conspirator. The rest were just dinner. She poured herself into philanthropy the way she once poured into spreadsheets. The Hendricks Family Foundation rebuilt schools, funded trade scholarships, and turned a derelict block in Beloit into a tech incubator. She served on the boards of the Kennedy Center and the Horatio Alger Association, trading hard hats for pearls, but never losing the farm girl squint. In 2020, the pandemic shuttered construction sites. Diane, now 73, pivoted overnight. She sourced masks by the millions, installed plexiglass at every counter, and kept every branch open. "Roofs don't social distance," she told CNBC. Sales dipped 8%, then roared back as homeowners trapped inside noticed leaks they'd ignored for years. Forbes pegged her net worth at $11 billion in 2021. By 2023, it was $15 billion, then $18 billion, as lumber prices spiked and ABC's private label shingles flew off shelves. In 2025, the magazine crowned her America's richest self-made woman at $22 billion. Diane read the headline, snorted, and went back to reviewing a bid for 10,000 squares of architectural shingles headed to hurricane-ravaged Florida. On a crisp October morning in 2025, she walks the Beloit headquarters campus. Red brick buildings connected by skywalks, solar panels glinting like scales. Employees wave. She knows half their kids' names. The original store is now a museum of sorts. The first cash register, Ken's battered hard hat, the barf bag org chart framed in glass. Diane pauses at a window overlooking the Rock River. A new mixed-use development rises where a factory once rusted. Apartments, a grocery co-op, a rooftop bar with views of the water. She funded it anonymously until someone leaked the paperwork. Now the sign reads Hendricks Commons in brushed steel. A young branch manager approaches, nervous. "Ms. Hendricks, the Madison store needs your okay on a credit line for a contractor who's underwater." Diane scans the file. "Give him 90 days, same as cash, but make him buy American-made only. And tell him happy birthday from me." His file says he's 42 today. The manager grins and hustles off. Diane watches the river slide past, coffee cooling in her hand. The girl who milked cows before sunrise is still there, under the tailored jacket and the billionaire ledger. She just built a bigger barn. The numbers are staggering. 900 plus locations, 18,000 employees, $18 billion in annual revenue. But the story isn't the balance sheet. It's the 4 a.m. alarm, the divorce papers, the creditors at the door, the skylight that stole her partner, the pandemic that tested her empire. It's the refusal to be laughed at, the decision to treat every roofer like gold, the quiet stubbornness that turned a dairy farm kid into a legend. Diane Hendricks doesn't give commencement speeches. She gives tool belts to high school grads who choose trades over debt. She doesn't collect art. She collects broken down towns and fixes them one brick at a time. At 78, she still flies coach when the Gulf Stream's in maintenance, still eats tuna casserole on Fridays, still signs every birthday card herself. The sun sets red over Beloit, painting the river the color of ABC trucks. Somewhere a contractor climbs a ladder with a bundle of shingles bought on credit from a woman who once cried over a shattered phone. The roof will hold, the story does too.